Okay, I'm streaming, so if anybody is able to go into basic income. Okay, turn this off. Okay. Okay, a little delay. So I put a link on the BN Norway Facebook page. So if anybody is able to just check that out, see if it works. Sounds like it works, yeah.
Is there Wi-Fi here?
Sounds like it works, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, 1813, 1813, 1813, 1813.
And then after that, it would be great if people are able to put their phone on flight mode. So I'm able to stream, so because I need a lot of the bandwidth for internet.
Yeah, you're right.
Great, thank you. It works. Yeah. It's my first time, so they're trying to. Or I tried last night at 2 o'clock in the morning or at night. I got it working.
So where do we find the link again?
It's on BN Norway or Basic Income Norway Facebook page.
And then what?
But I heard it works, so if you're able to put your phone on flight mode, that'd be great.
Good morning. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the UBI-Nordic Conference of 2019. My name is August. Next to me here stands Christine, and we will be your conference hosts for the weekend. So if you see us around, you can direct any questions at us. We do apologize for this technical delay in the beginning. We'll get going in just a minute. Just very briefly, the program for today. We will have a series of plenary sessions in this room and a number of parallel sessions starting later on, and lunch will be served at 12:30. And for more details, you can consult the conference program, of course.
So we will soon get going with our first session, but first a few remarks. As you will discover, we have taken a very democratic approach to this conference. So in your program, you will find a sheet that says concluding remarks. So we will leave the concluding remarks basically up to the audience. So any thoughts, ideas you have, just write them down on that sheet. It can be anything, and just submit it to the registration desk. And also we have a dance performance on Sunday. And downstairs at the end of the hall, you will see a wall that says Reasons to Stay Alive. And the artist, Christine Nilsen Oma, has asked that you write your reasons on that wall. And this is a part of a global campaign advocating the rights for people living with ME. So yeah, I think we'll just start with Anja. She will give a brief talk. She's the leader of BN Norway.
Yes, I will be very quick, but I just want to warmly welcome you all. And I think it's wonderful to meet all of you, all the new friends. And I'm very welcome to, very proud to welcome you to this, because we have worked so hard for a half a year and done a lot of things we've never done before. And so here we are today. It's something new for us, and we are also very grateful to have the Norwegian Student Association on board, and they have given us this wonderful venue. And I also want to thank all the speakers who has joined us in this event. Thank you very much for coming here. Yes, and just briefly, our motivation for doing this is that we really need, there's an urgent need for making this common vision to make real changes in the world. And I hope we all can come here together and meet and network and go out and leave this conference inspired and ready to make the real changes that is very necessary in our time. So, and then I hope you all will enjoy all the panels and entertainment, and that we together can make this vision for a brighter future together. So, thanks.
Thank you for that, Anja. We'll go straight now to our first session, where we will be discussing the Sustainable Development Goals in the context of UBI. And the session will be chaired by the leader of the Swedish Basic Income Party, Lena Stark. What? Oh yeah, I do apologize. But Lena has been a core member of the UBI-E, UBI Europe, and working on the Sustainable Development Goals. So, Lena, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, nice to see all of you. Just to clarify, yes, I started the Swedish Basic Income Party, but left it last year and other people are running it, so I started BN Sweden instead. So BN Sweden have existed for the last 2 weeks. Yes. So how do we get this on? You doing it now? So this is going to be a very interesting session. How do we link the sustainability goals with the UBI? We have a great panel. Hilde Latour from Holland, and she's involved with the BN Holland and everything to do with basic income. Paul Harnett and Laura Bannister from World Basic Income Group. And you're going to talk later on what you are doing. And we need to have a Norwegian on the panel as well. So we have Kalle Moen, and I only know that you're an economist. And in the end, we have Sarat Dwala from India. He's the vice chair of BN and also organizing the next BN conference in Hyderabad in India in August this year. So we are sort of, the audience, the panel is a bit of an expert on this, but I think we all can be expert on this. So I want to start this session with getting you in the audience involved. So I counted, you're about 100 of you here. So if you sort of sit in little groups of 5, 6 people, and I will give you one of the goals each. I'll see if we get a big picture, a better picture. So this is a 17 development goals that the United Nations decided. This is what we got. We're going to reach these goals 2030. So we have 11 years to do that. And I think with all these brains and all this creativity that we hear, I think we're going to get a good way to, good head start. So that's what I want this session to become. All right, so while they're getting the picture up, could you sort of move into groups of 5, 6 people? Or it doesn't matter if it's not that many, but if you sit, and then I just start to give each group a number, and that's the goal. The number that you get, that's the goal you're going to have to think about and come up with some ideas with. How can I link this goal with the UBI? And after you've thought about it for 6-7 minutes, the panel going to have their view, and then we can share it, and whatever you come up with that we haven't come up with here. We've got more and more new ideas. So here we have goal 1, goal 2, goal 3. It's very random, but you get it. Yeah, but then they will have to move around. Yeah, but then they will have to move around. This doesn't really work. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The 4 of you sitting there. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. All right? And now you wonder which goal you have. So do I.
There we go, got it.
Then we'll come up here. We hope. Eventually. So just feel free in your groups now and discuss it a little bit. And if you don't remember which goal you had, just pick one that seems really difficult. Don't pick the one how UBI end poverty, because we all know that. We need more of the other goals. Okay, we'll do it this way. Group 1, no poverty. Group 2, zero hunger. Group 3, good health and well-being. 4, quality education. 5, gender equality. 6, clean water and sanitation. That's interesting to come up with a solution with UBI for that. Affordable and clean energy is number 7. 8, decent work and economic growth. 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure. 10, reduced inequalities. Group 11, sustainable cities and communities. 12, responsibility, consumption and production. 13, climate action. 14, life below water. 15, life on land. 16, peace, justice and strong institutions. And number 17, partnerships for the goals, which is, I think, for human beings together. Right? 5 minutes. Good luck.
So, the reason that there is very sticky. It's not just in some in just 18 months, the number of children that were surviving so Yeah, which is a very good point. But then you can give the answer. I think the problem is that you have one jury, you can choose between one jury that safe or not to settle. The option is that you still use so it's also what you said, it reminds me of like the young parents and they're struggling with all the young people, so they don't have time to play with their kids. It's also there
Okay. So now the computer seems to be working as well, nearly. And try to keep your thoughts so we can talk about them after these presentations. So now we're gonna listen to Hilde, gonna talk about UBI and sustainable goals.
Yes, hello everyone. I am on a mission, and my guess is so are most of you. Because in 2015, we, as the United Nations, 193 countries, we defined 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We also agreed to make them happen before 2030. That means we have a little more than 10 years to go. So let's get on with it, let's not waste any more time and accelerate. Goal number 1, end poverty. Well, what would be the most efficient way to eliminate poverty? Exactly. The most efficient way to eliminate poverty for once and for all is a universal, unconditional basic income. In fact, if you look at the definition of a basic income, it not only ends poverty, it also puts an end to hunger, reduces gender inequalities and inequalities in general. Because a basic income is a periodic cash payment paid to every individual, high enough to meet your basic needs, food, water, clothes, shelter, no means testing, it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, no work requirement. The only condition you have to meet is being human and alive. It's as simple as that. No bureaucracy, no middleman, the money goes directly into your hands and you can decide freely what to spend it on. A basic income is a guarantee that whatever happens, you will never fall through the bottom of the poverty line. And then the poverty line becomes a stable floor, a stage from where you can flourish, from where you can decide what you will do with your time and energy. So yes, by definition alone, a basic income already contributes to 4 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And if you're one of those people that are indecisive and can't choose between a basic income and basic services, look what happened in Namibia when they had a period of extreme drought and they gave people cash instead of food. Some bought food for themselves so they could work on the land. Others bought food for their cattle. Another family bought seeds to grow crops for the next season, and someone else rented a donkey. So if you look at the definition of a basic income, it already contributes to 4 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. But guess what? There is so much more. We know from basic income pilots and cash transfer programs around the world that a basic income has impressive positive effects on a variety of domains. Take crime. In all countries, many crimes are poverty related, right? Well, in Namibia, for example, we saw a decrease of total crime rates by 30% within 1 year when people received a basic income. 30%, with an impressive decline in illegal hunting. You can look at health. What are the effects on people's health? Well, people change their eating patterns. They eat healthier food because they can afford it. Sanitation improves in countries where these facilities are not sufficiently available. Are you stressed? You'll be delighted to hear that a basic income reduces stress and stress-related health issues. Confirmed again by the recent experiments in Canada, where almost 90% reported less stress, and in Finland, where we also see that people become healthier and happier when they receive a basic income. It contributes to decent work. Decent work? What is decent work? We're obedient workers, aren't we? Isn't that decent enough? No. Decent work is no more child labor. People get the freedom to say no, or no thank you very much if you want to be polite, but people get the freedom to say no to employers who don't treat them well. People start their own businesses. They choose work and activities that are meaningful to them. You can choose activities, and you can call it work, but you can choose activities that are meaningful to you when you receive a basic income. It even contributes to community participation. People become more caring for others, compassionate. Education. Children stay in school longer. We saw that in India and many other countries. I don't know what it's like in Norway, but in countries like the Netherlands, students will not graduate with a debt. And if you're in your 40s and you want to change career, it is much easier to work less hours or quit your job so you can learn new skills and change direction. So if you look at the definition of a basic income and the evidence gathered in basic income experiments and cash transfer programs around the world, you will see, you have to look first of course, but if you do, you will see that a basic income alone contributes to 11 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals directly. 11 with one simple intervention. 11 with one simple intervention. Okay, let's carry on. We're not there yet. We have 6 more goals to go. Let's have a look at the 5 goals that concern planetary integrity. Well, you can look at it from different ways, but today I choose the way of financing a basic income. If you introduce carbon tax and tax on plastics, and you use that to finance a basic income, you prevent carbon tax and tax on plastics to frustrate all the other goals I just mentioned. And if you replace targeted subsidies on kerosene, for example, like they do in India, if you replace targeted subsidies on kerosene for a basic income, people will be more likely to buy solar panels. So we have one more goal to go, innovation. Innovation is a tricky one. Production and logistics became so efficient that fewer and fewer people earn more and more, while more and more people are struggling to survive because they lost their paid job because of automation. But are we really going to freeze and run away from innovation? Or are we going to give people a basic income so we create a whole new group of fresh innovators that can come up with solutions to save our planet? Thank you.
Thank you, Hilde. There you go, we've got a lot of goals already sold and we haven't even finished this first session. Paul, Laura?
Do I need the microphone?
Yes.
Okay. Where's our technician? We need our laptop. Okay, whilst we're waiting for the laptop, let me quickly introduce myself and Laura can introduce herself. We're Paul Harnett, Laura Bannister from World Basic Income. Very briefly, I'm an economist. I've been working in international development for over 30 years. And sure, we're targeting these goals. Before that, it was the Millennium Development Goals. Poverty's up on the top of the list. It's outside the World Bank building in Washington, DC. Let's get rid of poverty.
But very few of the jobs that I've done in international development, I think, have been effective and sustainable. The only one, in fact, that I thought was pretty good was over 20 years ago in Malawi. The British government asked me to help them dish out fertilizer and seed to every single family in Malawi. I said, okay, but I don't agree with it. I think they should get cash. So if you let me do an experiment, handing out cash instead, then I'll make sure everyone gets their bags of fertilizer and seeds. They said, okay, you can experiment with 1,000 people. And it was the best thing I ever did. Those people really surprised me what they did with the cash. A lot of them bought their basics, soap, oil, sugar, salt, and it meant that they didn't have to work for anyone else and could work on their own land. In fact, it was only about $10 that I managed to give to them. In fact, it was in a voucher that they had to spend in a shop, and I could track exactly what they spent. And then I went and talked to them and I said, why did you spend it on this? And I had no idea what was going on, but they surprised me in terms of they spent it on what they needed. They were smart, and they didn't work for 3 months for somebody else. And my favorite recollection is a guy sat in his tobacco field. I went up to him, he said, this is the first time I've been tying my tobacco leaves together to sell it for the government price. Every other year, I've just had to sell the fields for a knockdown price to local traders. So that's why I believe in basic income, and I think it's very important for the whole of the world. Laura.
Thanks. So I got interested in basic income years ago as a justice campaigner. So the first time I heard about basic income as a general idea, it sounded ridiculous. And then the more I thought about it over time, the more it seemed like the solution to practically everything. And I got interested in it as a national idea, like most people here. But my head has always been in the international space, and especially thinking about the kind of massive disparities of wealth between the global north and the global south. And it occurred to me, why are we not applying this fantastic idea that can solve most of our problems? Why would we not also apply that at the global level? And then luckily I stumbled across Paul, and it turned out he was a World Bank economist, and he agreed to join me on it. It's a good find. Well, when you're looking at this problem worldwide, so we support basic income at a national level, but we believe there should be an ultimate global floor, because there's always going to be some people that are not picked up by national basic income. So if you're unlucky enough to live in a country where your government has not seen the light and decided that basic income is a great idea, you will be missed. And the people in those countries are probably going to be the people that will benefit from basic income most of all. People, if you leave your home country, if you migrate, that is one of the most vulnerable positions you will ever be in your life, and you will be missed by a national basic income because you will fall outside the criteria. But a world basic income, you will always have that to fall back on. If you live in a failed state, or your country is at war, or has an economic crisis, again, everything falls apart, you'll probably lose your job, but you will have your world basic income to fall back on. So it absolutely picks up all those people for whom national basic income is not going to do the whole job. For people who are lucky enough to live in countries where they do get a national basic income, again, world basic income just gives you that ultimate basic floor that creates a kind of global citizenship worldwide, and gives you that fellowship. So here's our presentation. Which way do we go? Down. So imagine if everybody in the world was paid a basic income. Our model is based on dividends from the global commons. There's a session at the end of this weekend about the commons. It's increasingly becoming the basis by which a lot of basic income programs propose to be funded. At the moment, not much of the world is conceived as a global commons, but it should be, and increasingly bits of it are, and that's the proposal for how we would fund world basic income. The impact on the Sustainable Development Goals would be immense. We're not going to go through them one by one. We know what they are. But every single goal on here, especially the ones that are harder to pick up with national basic income, and especially based on a global commons funding model, which includes things like a carbon tax, an ocean pollution tax, various other eco taxes, and They involve better management of the global commons as well, and disincentives for abusing it. So they help to touch those goals that are harder to reach. It would also cost less. It's a very efficient way, as we know, of providing for these goals. We have calculated figures for a basic income of $10 per person per month. Now, compared to a lot of national basic incomes, that sounds very minimal. But I've just been talking to Sarah, and he has explained the numbers that are being discussed for a basic income in India. It's $85 per family per month. So $10, we're talking about adults and children. So $10 per person per month is not wildly different. And again, it's a basic floor for people to fall below. We also think it's a starting figure that would hopefully be raised. But for $10 per month for the entire world, it's less than $1 trillion. If you then start to bring that down with different kind of poverty filters, all low-income countries, it's only 68 billion. That is minuscule. That's that's the aid budgets of a few rich countries. We also believe there should be a whole country pilot to get this off the ground, and we picked the countries that had suffered from Ebola. Sierra Leone being an example that you could do with less than $1 billion. All of the various taxes we propose will be gathered up and put in a sovereign wealth fund. And we've always been a huge admirer of Norway's sovereign wealth fund. The way that Norway has treated its oil wealth relative to practically every other country worldwide has been incredible. It's a great example of how a commons funding model can provide brilliantly for the people. This is our summary of some kind of basic finance calculations. We are in constant process of developing these further and understanding better the basis by which you could raise the money. But as you can see, the figure in the bottom right-hand corner, if you raised all of these taxes at the very conservative levels that we've suggested, that would actually do a world basic income of $71 per person per month worldwide. So, you know, we don't even have to be very good at collecting these taxes or apply all of them to generate a world basic income. Given that it's possible, we should definitely do it. The most common criticism that we receive in world basic income is it can't be done. But as Paul has pointed out, it's our world, it's our economy. We can run it however we want. And if we want to have a world basic income, then that is something that we could achieve. We're working on building a movement, so please join us.
Well, thank you very much, Laura and Paul. Kalle, your turn.
Is this on?
I have no idea. I'm not the technician here.
Is it on now?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So I will just use the few minutes that I have to repeat a proposal that I have together with an Indian economist, Indian-American economist, Devraj Ray. And that proposal is just that every country in the world should commit itself to pay, say, 10% of the national income that should go to universal basic income. That means shared on everybody, adult in the country. And I just repeat what kind of advantages such a very simple scheme should have. First of all, it indexes the level of universal basic income in the country. It is a huge problem in many places where you introduce things like that they have to be renegotiated, and then it depends on the political situation in the country, and it's very easily diluted by political opportunism from year to year. When you commit to a certain percentage, this is sort of, that means when the country becomes richer, then these things grow automatically, because you have committed to it. Secondly, it means that everybody gets a share of the common income in the country, created very often by trust, cooperation, and whatever it is, and they get a fair share. In my view, the share should be much higher than 10%, but start at 10% is much easier to implement and to get acceptance of. Thirdly, it has this advantage that people get some property rights, as if they had property rights in all modern technologies that come into the country. It doesn't eliminate the conflict over new technologies, new robots, but everybody has 10% of the ownership of these robots by this commitment to share the income in this way in the country. And the argument that many people have against universal basic income is it is too expensive. Well, too expensive. Here we start
on the local condition, 10% of the local income in that country. And that doesn't give such a high force to arguments that we have to start out low. And there is also I can't remember how many numbers I get to this, 6th or 7th argument I have in favor of this, is that it really is a bonus for social cohesion, that you got more of a common interest. That means also that you have more collective incentives. Economists are pretty good, they think, I'm an economist, in the individual incentives, but the most important incentives are social. They are collective. They have to solve certain things. And here, for every collective things you can solve by forming groups, by forming unions, by having associations in the society, you get 10% of the coordination gains from these things. Let me just stop by some quick numbers. So 10% of the income to shared equally on all adults. In India, that means that you get the poverty line, more or less, around that level. In South Africa, it means that you get a good way above the poverty line. South Africa is much richer per capita, as you know, and 10%, but the poverty line is pretty low. So you get way beyond the poverty line. In Norway, 10% to everybody is like 80,000 Norwegian kroner to per grown person. Let me just stop by saying that one way to implement this is to think about it that it is an international commitment. That means that if a country doesn't want to do it and the neighboring country does it, then you create a social movement in Tanzania because they would like to have it, because Kenya has it, and all countries have committed to it, say in the development goals. And that means that it's just like the human rights, that it's policed by a common interest for people to ask for the same thing that somebody others get. And I think this is very important for social policies, that you have some international commitment to it and some policing of monitoring that the proposals are actually followed. And I think some of these things, we call it the development bonus, universal basic share, I think have all the good properties of a universal basic income and some additional good things in addition. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you. Sarat, would you like to say something? Because you do. Yes. Yes.
Good morning. It's so wonderful to see all of you here. I think it's a matter of time even those seats will be filled up, because I would like to point out to the 3 important crises that we are going through. 10 years ago, a man called Guy Standing came to India, invited by Self-Employed Women's Association to start a pilot project on unconditional cash transfers. So they asked me to lead the project. I found the idea really, really ridiculous. I said that giving cash is never a part of our grammar. In India, the welfare grammar has always been give them rice, give them size, give them bicycles, give them anything, but never give cash to people, because those fellows don't know how to responsibly make use of it. So I said, I don't think this will work, but anyway, I needed a job, so I said, okay. Then we did the study. We went through different motions of meeting the politicians, the bureaucrats. Then 2 years ago, I believed in the whole thing when I went to the villages and saw and did the pilot. 2 years ago, even 2 years ago, I felt that basic income is an utopia. You're all saying it's a utopia, but it's an achievable utopia. I'll tell you how we can achieve it. That was my argument 2 years ago. But now, having traveled, having seen so many countries and talking to so many people, I have come to a conclusion that we are in a crisis. It's not a utopia. It's an urgent need. It's the only thing that can save us save the mankind. I'll give you my reasons why I say that. Stephen Hawking, the famous physicist, said that technology is capable of giving the entire mankind a good life, and they can prosper, provided the owners of the machines are ready to share their wealth with the rest of the mankind. And he says, but I don't see that happening. Okay, my good friend Hilde Latour says, when people ask the question, who is going to pay for it? She said, not who, what is going to pay for it? I really like that argument, because she's talking about liberating the machines of their owners. I think Marx talked about liberating human beings from the chains of their servitude, but she says that let's liberate the machines of their owners. Let there be self-owning machines creating wealth. It is possible today. Don't you think it's possible? I think those are the possibilities that have made us get excited about basic income. I'm really excited about basic income. So are all my friends here. Now, I would just like to point to 3 crises. The first crisis, all of you know, which are related to the Sustainable Development Goals. Ecological crisis, the growth model that we have adopted, the corruption of capital, as Guy's last book says, has led us on a path of excessive consumption and growth addiction. And without growth, looks like there's not going to be movement ahead. It's only growth. In fact, last week I was in Taiwan, so friends were calculating that in Taipei itself, each day they generate about 35% of food wastage. 35% of food that is produced each day is thrown away. There are no ways of thinking of recycling that or giving it to the poor or creating some kind of infrastructure, but they just throw it away. Because the factories that are producing this food have to run. The people have to get wages. The owners have to get profits. So we have gotten into a very perverse cycle. So that is a kind of thing which has led to our ecological crisis. The second crisis is the moral crisis. The economy is dictating what the culture should be today rather than the other way around. So we feel that meaning of life is only consumption, more clothes, more cars. But apart from consumption, there is no life. That is what we have come to. And that is a very serious problem. It's a moral crisis we have today. And the third is the social crisis. A small group of people, extremely wealthy, are determining what our lives are going to be, how we are going to live, how we are going to play, how we are going to eat, and how we are going to entertain ourselves, and how we are going to die. And that social crisis is today we are seeing masses and masses of people coming out of the streets. Hundreds of thousands of farmers were on the streets last year in India. Hundreds and thousands. In one city, there were 600,000 people on one single day coming from all the districts. What do they want? They said that agriculture is no longer sustainable. We are not able to live. It's not giving us livelihood. What do? And you have other movements in the world. So I see a sense of urgency. I see a serious sense of urgency that we need to address. And I'm not saying basic income is going to solve all the problems. What basic income will do, a universal basic income will do, is to give a floor to the entire mankind to stand on. But the planet will not be sustainable just with that. The planet will be sustainable only when we put a ceiling on our consumption. There needs to be a moral revival, new philosophical perspectives of sustainability. Unless we do that, I seriously feel that we are doomed. So, which makes my last point. If we go to a doctor and say,
Doctor, I want to live for 100 years. Give me a formula. But one condition. Don't ask me to eat or not eat that, drink or not drink that. Don't ask me to change all that. I will not change. Don't ask me anything about my physical activity. Don't ask me anything, all those questions, but give me a formula. It'll simply take you and throw you out. Now, we want a sustainable planet. We want to next generations to live a good life, but we don't want to open any questions about private property, about public inheritance, about the commons. So people generally celebrate technological disruption, but when you do ask these questions, they say, oh, you're a Marxist. Oh, you are a radical. Oh, you are, oh, this. Oh, I know you. I know where you're coming from. Things like that. You're not even allowed to speak. What am I asking? I'm asking that this common land belongs to common people, and the state is only a custodian. Isn't that clear to us? No. State is the owner. Private property, they have created the wealth. Anyway, all that is there. So I feel for a sustainable planet, I think all these goals will be fulfilled if we do address these three crises and ensure that there's a floor for every man, woman, and child, and there's a ceiling on our wretched consumption. Thank you.
Could we please get the picture with the goals up here? Anyone that can fix that? No, we can just, this we can see. So now back to your audience that you got thinking earlier on. We don't have time to go through all the different groups, but I want to see any of your groups, anyone that has things to add that we haven't brought up here on stage today, that wants to talk about something that you talked about? Yes?
I think it's related to
I think you probably need to have a mic. Is that one working as well? So which goal were you talking about?
Quality education.
Yes.
I think what you just addressed, really facing the three crises we have currently, I think it's way more related to education. Further, like this? Sorry. I think in my group, if we address this problem, that everyone has access to education, and that also the education system changes its mentality. I think it's not only mainly the elite, yeah, that we are not aiming to educate ourselves to just get a higher and higher income, and so to be able to consume every day more and more. If we change the way we see the goal of education to actually enrich ourselves and not as a money goal, then probably we'll have more chances to achieve those goals and save our planet. Or not save our planet, honestly, but save mankind, because planet will probably regenerate itself. Just taking rid of us.
Good, thank you. Any other groups? Yes, where we were.
Hi, we're on the 10th objectives. Our group, one of our members, I won't say who, talked about maximum wage, because you talked about kind of minimum wage with a basic income, but establishing a maximum wage could also be an idea. And a second idea would be on VAT. The VAT system is the most unequal taxation system that could exist, because poor people and rich people pay the same VAT on every product. So we were talking about low weight VAT on the for the basic needs, to fulfill the basic needs.
Okay, thank you. Any other group? Here we go.
A point on the 11th goal, sustainable cities and
development,
good, living good villages. So basic income will also help people be able to choose to stay where they are or choose to live where they want to live. And then we think lots of more people will choose to stay in the countryside, grow their own food, take care of their own buildings and clothes. And this will really be a very big benefit for ecology all over the world, so that the urbanization will be not stopped, but decreased in intensity. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm a bit curious about the goal of with life underwater. Which group had that? No one? It's another solution. Life on land. Did you have anything to come up there, Viva?
I think subsistence farming was one thing that we agreed upon, which would have a lot of spread around effects.
Okay, I hope you've been thinking a lot about it, and I hope now you have questions for our panel. So the floor is free for any questions about anything. Yes?
I've got one remark or question that I would like to respond to. And if I understood it correctly, there was on a maximum wage, not only a minimum wage. Here's how I think about these things. I think law regulation on maximum wages are not very feasible policies. But I think a basic income, in particular in the form of a universal basic share, can help in achieving what you are proposing. Because what is needed is really to increase the bottom. And then you empower big groups in society. When you empower big groups, they have stronger social control over many things, including perhaps also wage setting at the higher level. Experiences from Northern European countries, for example, is that welfare state support to poor people that empower them also in the market context when they're bargaining over wages. And the main result is to keep the high wages down and lifting the bottom up. So I think it is more social organization, and therefore universal basic income or universal basic shares I like the most, I think can help in achieving these sort of collective organizations that are needed for really controlling the maximum wages. But you can't use the law. I think that's infeasible for these things. But I think social organization is, and universal basic share can help in achieving it.
Yes, I have a question for you. This is probably... my name is Vegard. The question goes something like this, that all those 17 points are very beautiful because they point to that actually sustainability and ecological, sustainable societies must be developed hand in hand with something like basic income, so that we have a basic system that actually works operating on itself, and it's beautiful. On the other hand, we have this thing with that our economical system is a debt-based system, which bases all the countries in the world to sell out all of their produce to other countries so that they can earn money, so that they can cover up their own debt, and that our financial systems are like everything else in our society. Everything is privately owned, even our monetary system. And then it becomes interesting because really, if this basic income is going to be in activity, we need clever thoughts about how to create good ecological sustainable systems that actually works. And I believe this is fully possible and all of that, and it is going to be the realization of the best dream ever on this planet. But to sum up my question, the financial systems are like debt-based and work by selling. We need to sell out all our things that we should have had ourselves.
Excuse me, is the question coming? Because we've got very little time left.
Yeah. To shorten it up, our monetary system is probably privately owned. Somebody owns our monetary system, and all of the money that we have is actually based upon debt. That means that to fulfill this economical system, we need to sell out everything that we produce so that we can get in more free money to clean out our own debt. That means that this system with universal basic income, which goes hand in hand with
I think we need to. I think we have to have a question because the other people do have questions.
How to go into the system and actually makes those who really are on the top in the world banks and the Federal Reserves and all of those who are really owning the system and holding the system, how to really get them to get to see that this is the way to the future. Actually, this is the perfect idea. How to do that?
Yeah, thank you. And we had a question. You there, so you can take that question, and then we give the panel to the guy.
So my question is to Carla. Why, and this is mainly universal basic income related to, say, more advanced countries like Norway. Why, if robots are going to displace so many workers, it seems to me that whoever owns the robots are the ones that are really going to be in control of the economic system or get the benefit. So why universal basic income rather than universal basic ownership?
Okay, so the first question then, how do we create these outside this top-steered economy system we have today? That was your question. Anyone has an answer?
Sovereign money.
Okay, I'll try and pick up on a lot of the themes that have come through all of those questions. We've got a criticism of the international financial system. The answer is tax. To paraphrase Christine Lagarde, the head of the IMF recently, the international tax system is broken. So there's a big need for a reform of tax. You could go further and also talk about money. I think that's what you were touching on as well, is that a lot of money creation is actually done by private banks these days, and maybe governments and the public sector should take that responsibility back. And you'll find in many countries that debate is going forward. Robots and ownership, personally, I don't see a lot of difference. I think it's a worry that a lot of jobs will be mechanized but it's always been the case. The owners, whether it's robots or factories, it's capital. Yeah? And it's capital that's the problem. That relates to your question on universal basic ownership. And there are various ways of funding your universal basic income. And one of them is common capital shares. Varoufakis has really pushed for this, and I think Julio here has also worked on that. So So I do think that that is a very valid point. If you're going to fund your universal basic income, yeah, let's go for a share in the ownership of capital. Why not? Just to come back on sustainable farming, somebody mentioned up here. Yeah, I went to Namibia just after independence, and I worked quite a lot on land reform, and I was horrified that big business farming was being pushed and your small farmers were getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. And in recent years, small farmers all over the world have lost land about the size of Spain. It's a major cause of migration, and small farmers are just not recognised. I did calculations, they're more productive and more sustainable. And I think that's the kind of thing that we need to recognise. And one thing that would stop a lot of this privatisation of land by large companies is a decent land value tax, which is a sustainable way of funding a basic income. And finally, with regards to the maximum wage, yeah, why stick with maximum wage? Go for maximum wealth as well. And I agree with you, not a bad idea.
To Bruce, I think there are two sides of the same thing. If you have an ownership to the stream of the income that comes from an asset like a robot, then you actually own that fraction of the robot in reality. So that's a more question about how big this share is going to be. And I sympathize that there should be collective ownership to robots, because they're basically the result of long state finance research that everybody have contributed to. And then there are those who sort of implement the last stage in the innovation. They get all the benefits. And I sympathize with the view that you should actually be more of a collective ownership to them. But I think it's much easier to argue and to implement that you get a share of the benefits, and maybe a higher share than I proposed. Or, the experiences from all countries that the protection of the streams of income is much less than the protection of the ownership in itself. In Sweden, for example, they introduced this wage earner funds. That's the first time where the bourgeoisie in Sweden solves the collective action problem and protested against it. And it was the first time where the bourgeoisie parties took over for the Social Democrats. Because I think the challenge to ownership is much more a political threat than implementing a share of the stream of income. And they are very much alike. And it's also that sometimes a share of the stream of income is more democratic than the collective ownership, in the sense that you have to have all kind of representation and so on for this to be really collective ownership. So I think a share of the stream of income is a good idea, but it can be combined. It's flexible. It can be combined with any ownership structure. You can have cooperatives, you can have anything. It can be combined with everything. It's just a redistributing scheme in itself, and that's why I favor it.
Okay, I think it's time to round this session up here. For me, when I made that connection with the UBI and the goals, it was like, wow, it sort of all fell into place. So that's what I've decided to spend my next 11 years to do, to connect the goals. And I think it's a good way to spread the world of a basic income in society. Because at least in Sweden, all government, local or regional or different levels, have to think about the 17 goals in all new agendas in everything they do. And if you can come in there and talk about basic income, we've introduced that, you got nearly all the goals solved. So it's an easy solution we can spread to others. And we have actually started a group now called Mission Possible 2030. So it's Sarat, Hilde, me, and Anja. And we're getting a homepage and we're getting it set up. And so that's our work for the next 11 years. So if you want to join us, please do. And let's make it happen. And let's make this goal solved in 2030. It is a mission possible, actually. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, the panel.
We'll have a 15-minute coffee break now, so if you'll be back at 11:15, we'll continue with session 2.
Gör det. Large corporations like in favor of basic income, so that they can consumers get more money to spend. That's completely misses the point of basic income providing the process of saying no. Yeah. That's what I got as well. I've followed this work for quite a few years now. He got in favor of basic income or basic income was here exactly because he was in support of the underdog and giving power to the masses. It's like, you got the point.
How do you see it?
Yeah, he got a proposal. Yeah, Yeah, I think he just wants to appear like the revolutionary people. Yeah, but it gives a bad rap. On the other hand, I think it's positive that there are controversial figures about Spain. It's a big presenting it even in a negative manner. Because we reached enough level for people from different spectrums to say, hey, yeah, I'm open to because I'm a capitalist. So we just need to be careful about how we present it. Like we will have been in
yeah, not only that, but there's always you know, it's like
and I think it shows that there are more stories than just one this is love, this is love, this is
yeah, I think that's a much stronger argument in America than I just hear.
Men er purikk.
Which is socialism, yeah.
And then because he's talking about that way, then you got people on the left going, oh, this is liberal. And you got some people too, also like Bernie supporters, like ultra left who are describing like nationalism, and it's like
That's saying almost just covering it.
yeah.
and just like a lot of money.
We got a little drink, I think.
So what we need to do, everybody outside
It's and it's hard to
Did
see.
you get my right side?
Yes, because you were facing this way. But I probably took like 20 or 30, so hopefully you can find something.
That's cool. I was going to go on, you know, that diagram that we shared with the connectivity and range.
Oh yeah, that's definitely. Because I think that single diagram explains how to pay for it. It's right there.
So all that,
it's being taken right now.
and it's deliberate. Have you read Jane Mayer, Dark Money? Or,
I have not read Dark Money.
the story's all that. Well, the other one is Fancy Complaint.
Definitely. But I don't want to wait for that whole generation.
She's got the
I mean,
history
we do need to educate kids definitely, and then you make
I wouldn't have read that price, but I mean, you know, his kind of.
But I think
I mean, Milton Friedman's the big example of
it's not just about the kids getting to 18, it's about
export to Britain. All the rest of it.
17 before they have the power in society.
The economist really.
I then asked it, and I don't know.
She found his whole
So in this book, it has a bunch of like his archive stuff. It's
like reading history lessons. But those two books, Jane Mayer, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's all deliberate because the discussions in the 20s and the 30s in the States about what philosophy do, all of that, they just put away at it all the time. So now philosophy is
people who are
now we've got a whole work around technology.
people say please do this or please do this, but understand how we
Philosophy, paying for Facebook to get Brexit and Trump.
yeah. There's definitely an argument fixing Republicans too. Some of them say. In fact, so someone, Conrad Shaw,
But as long as the music plays
media
change the music, I'm totally happy to do another game.
Actually,
But don't
original applicants read that and it changed their mind.
All my friends are
So
still
they're sharing it
playing
amongst each other. Like,
Oh,
yeah,
but it's change the music. So we all do a different dance. And they also say, if you
Together
make
with Reverend
I would
performance. Coffee and the withdrawal symptoms.
Please let us change the game. Well, I think we are saying the same thing. Because that person you're talking about is obviously the target circle.
So yeah, based on the effects of the
when it's nothing to get out.
how I saw
No,
that
he doesn't want to get out.
He wants to came up with a proposal
So there is no longer.
in Europe, convincing himself
That's the beauty of making
I
think at the moment, like, there's
as
definitely
a way to achieve sustainable development goals by outsourcing
and definitely
Oh, by 2030.
Yeah, by 2030. By
No,
the year
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so they're gonna get
And
a bunch of cities.
you know, and there's
30
no
cities
stigma
specifically.
around
Like the branding is 30 for 30.
you don't do paid
30
work.
cities on board.
Yeah, okay.
To
Yeah,
have
but of course, like, there's actually
All the cities
all
until
the much that they have
And some ways where people work.
and yeah, exactly. And basically,
Yeah, it's
you know,
beginning with
you
the
can just ride straight through all of that, and you know, and I think that's something to unite. Yeah, you're kind of everybody gets the same, and everybody's on the same basis, and then you know, flourish.
Yeah, for sure. Especially in cities that already practice it. But I mean, where they then distribute the money to do this.
Yeah, and of course, most people say,
Let's take one look. How can we find it? Like, really see it as a power change. Seeing more come together, and everybody should have a fair share. Then they can have
Yeah,
just
the city as a company.
I also don't like
Yeah, I live in Berlin now.
You can lower the cash.
Rent is going more than 100% up in less than 50 years. So there is a movement now because Berlin has a historical thing basically opposing all the. It has a strong unions, it has a strong alternative movement. So yeah, there's a big movement now against the increase of rent. And I think I can get a link from that and tell them, hey, you know what?
A lot of people think capitalism and market
there's
are the same thing. That's a practice. And I can understand that. Yeah.
And that's where I said, when you say children, because you see the children are like, they work with that. I'm saying that,
So NIMBY is one of the main causes of this problem.
school, the society, is
That's yeah. Yes.
You don't have to change your mind. They're in this.
I totally understand your theory. I'm a bit afraid that your argument is getting like an area, like in a if I make an image, like you say, we really have to save those children from that. Instead of seeing what they are huge complexities, now it's so difficult for us. So first, what my approach is, I really my approach is to address the problem on the first then have children not to way and not putting all the energy in, let's save those children from a bad road and not changing the bad road to the same
My view from a educational market, that's why I'm close to the story.
But related to that, it's scary global supply. The number of empty houses. What's the word in Europe and the US? The number is 6 times more. The 6 times more houses. On the other side of the planet, we're getting people dying out of hunger because we fix it and give it to a specific while
it's a long
their neighbors are dying out. What is it?
do something about it. I'm saying that absolutely.
So let's strengthen those stories and wait till they're stronger and then everything will also have to address the power structures.
Exactly. We have to do lots of things. But if we don't do something about the stories, then this against the person that will defeat in your way. So it's not one or the other.
Actually, I think I grew up in the process because that's why we
It's just and there were funds, European grants, targeted towards agriculture, but the way they were targeted is very conditional and very tailored towards specific type of production. So my family is an olive oil producer, so there were grants, specific subsidies given to the farmers specifically to produce oil. So what the farmers did is, what the farmers did well is teach everything else and increase everywhere. So create a huge monoculture under the impression that, okay, that's big money. We produce more olive oil than that, and we take the money and yes, we're rich. Already as a kid, I was thinking,
This much money for doing nothing. And it's like,
by basing our whole capacity in selling the one thing that we're producing, and at the same time, with this
I'm going to be running all over.
Oh yeah, you're right. No. Listen, frankly, I don't need to get up. I just need
because the farmers basically tricked the system and claimed that they have more olive trees than they actually had, by claiming the neighbors and agreeing with the neighbors so they get more subsidies. The only motivation to trick the system, and the whole governments basically tailored themselves to that part of production instead of working ideally as a cooperative would. Of course, they failed. And now, 20 something years later, we have a huge need for water, for fertilizers.
May I ask you a question? Does the link for this live streaming change from session to session?
Now it's the same one, but after lunch I'll start a new one, so it'll be on the
It's too much now, nobody does.
Okay, but I will not retweet every 2 hours, so it would be very nice perhaps just if there's a channel or something I could tweet and say there's a live stream of the conference and then people find the actual stream.
If you're able to go on Facebook.
I don't want to send people to Facebook.
Because I'm gonna have
Is it a YouTube channel, the same channel every time? Okay, so then I'll just distribute the channel. Yeah, and then the people can just open the channel and see the actual video. Okay.
Hopefully.
But what is the motivation behind them having to trick the system to get that money? It's a condition. If everybody gets it, you don't have to produce a system. It's a scam. And you don't have to, like Patricia Hilde used to say, you don't have to pay inspectors to inspect inspectors. wasting so much money. It's impossible. I would
I am streaming live on UBI-Nordic, the YouTube channel. So if you want to share the channel or the stream with someone, you can do that. UBI-Nordic on YouTube. So you can just search for that, and hopefully it will just show up on YouTube. You'll see the direct link there. So you can just share that with others. Okay, continue. If you have any questions, just ask me.
Hello? Hello? Anybody else? Yeah.
Hello? Yeah, där var vi. Welcome to session 2, boldly titled Solutions for the Brighter Future. The chair for this session is Enno Schmidt, who is a German artist and activist for basic income. He is the co-founder of the Swiss Initiative for Basic Income, which was a large campaign leading up to the referendum. And he's also been a very important voice in the debate internationally. He once said in a TEDx interview, when he was asked about the number of supporters for basic income, that everyone is for it, but they just don't know it yet, which I thought was very well put. So, Enno, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So welcome here, and I hope this will make a start in Norway, that Norway contributes and take part at the global discussion. And as we heard before, it's inevitable that an unconditional basic income will be implemented because that's necessary, and that's the same idea like democracy, human rights, abolishing slavery. It's always the same idea in a different time, different people, different status of development. So, and I guess our thing to do, our target, our commission is that it includes humanity, it includes moral and ethic issues. So that's a basic income for the people. It can be misused as well as every big idea can misuse and will try to be misused. So I think that's what I want to say. We talk about solutions for a brighter future. We talk about an unconditional basic income. We are not those who implement that, finally, but we, I guess, are those who define and determine what it is, how it is implemented, what it is in a moral way, moral sense. So that's my brief statement in before. And now I think we start with a short introduction of the participants at the panel and a short statement of each of them, and a little bit of discussion here on the podium, but then, of course, we want to open up for your statements or questions for the discussion with you. I would like to start with Lena. Lena is just in the run. You are warmed up. So you are already introduced. You have been core member of the UBI European initiative and movement. And what is not said yet is that you are working with troubled teenagers, in particular women, and also with older addicts, alcoholics. So this is your background of experience also for your going for basic income. It's your time, let's say 5 minutes or something like that, or whatever you want. Maybe 1 hour. Yeah, if you have a statement. Otherwise, I give you a question. How you like it? You have a statement.
I don't know if it's a statement, but considering the theme, solution for a brighter future, so I mean, I think all of us in here knows what it is, and so we already solved that, it's the UBI. But the thing is, in this life review, how do we get other people to realize that this is the solution? And I think we have to find different ways, and that's a greatness with UBI. You can come into it from all different angles. So we need to find all these angles and to explain for people that are involved in different areas why it's such a brilliant idea. And I think that is the hardest bit. We have to be plain and simple when we describe why we all gain on a basic income. No further.
Okay, we come back to that. I introduced Barb Jacobsen. She's coordinator, Basic Income UK, and advocate for rights for people who need help. And you are working 35 years for rights for women, for shelter, for people who need help. And you are, what is the name? Founding chair of UBI Europe. And you are knowing everything about everything what's going on in the UK and in Europe.
Okay, that's quite an introduction. Thank you, Anna, and thank you very much for inviting me to this conference. I just wasn't quite sure what I was going to say today. Part of me played with a lot of ideas about how basic income would right the things that are upside down right now, and particularly how we think about money. And how we think about work and how we think about each other. But I also have to say, I mean, obviously the big thing on everyone in the UK's mind at the moment is Brexit. So I thought, well, that would probably be the thing that I could specifically talk about, both the whys and wherefores, and also what I can see as maybe a way out. And yeah, we'll see about that. I work as a welfare rights advisor. And I also work with pensioners for a small charity in central London. And I have to say that the week that I had before I came here was, if nothing else, something that really kind of fired me up again about basic income. I work with a lot of people with long-term health conditions. Most of them are my age or a bit older, and they're being pressured into work because of the way the welfare system has changed in the UK, so that it doesn't really matter how old you are, and because they've also raised the pension age, so for women it's gone from 60 to 67 in a very short time. Men, it's also creeping up from 65 to 67, and there's really no there's really no recognition given about the effects of different jobs on our bodies and on our health. We work a lot with Bangladeshi people. Most of them, the older ones in particular, have worked in restaurants, and anyone who's worked in a restaurant, whether as a waiter or as a chef, you're basically, as a waiter, your working life is probably 10 years at most. As a chef, you can probably last until maybe 50, but the ones that last beyond 50 usually have hip replacements, all right? If they haven't already picked up a coke habit, all right? Because you're talking about 16-hour days, a lot of pressure, having to get things out, having to manage people, et cetera, okay? So there's no recognition in our current system, in our current welfare system, for the different effects of different jobs. I mean, there are some jobs that you can do until you're 90. I mean, if you're sitting at a computer and you don't have to walk around, you can probably do that until whenever, okay, until you can't see. But the people I'm working with, they usually have physical jobs. I'm also, one thing that's also very much at the forefront of my mind right now is migration. I'm working with several people who are homeless or near homeless, who are European migrants, one from Bulgaria, the other one from Poland. And, because of physical disabilities, again, that they picked up on the job, they were working in the building trades. One has epilepsy and started falling off ladders. The other one was, rather than being paid, his last employer cut his thigh up with a knife, all right? So, it's one of the things that really makes me very much interested in ideas like a Eurodividend, because, while we have so-called freedom of movement in Europe, it's actually freedom to work somewhere, all right? It's not freedom of movement. It's, if you don't work somewhere for 2 years, for at least 2 years, if you take a break, if say you've worked for 10 years, like the guy whose leg was cut, if you work for 10 years there, if you have to leave for longer than 2 years, then you lose all your rights as a migrant in a particular country. So I'm really interested in ideas like Eurodividend or like a world-based income that would make it possible, okay, not just not just to exist in another country, but also to exist in your own country. The other thing we're looking at in places like Bulgaria is the population has about a third to a half of the population has migrated out of Bulgaria. I know it's a similar problem in Greece, and the other poor countries in Europe, where it's basically, or in Portugal, where the government actually encourages youth to go out of the country and to bring the money back. But actually, while that is very, it's when we're young, we all want to travel and all that sort of thing. Losing those skills and losing that energy and losing the ideas that people have, I think, is really devastating for those countries. So I really want to see a Europe where there is real freedom of movement, all right, where it's not just about, you can work somewhere, but also that you can stay in a place. I mean, a thing that, that almost never comes into the whole migration debate is, how we're destroying, how Europe and the US in particular are helping to destroy other countries, all right, whether that's through war, or whether that's through land dispossession, or whether that's through environmental degradation, all right, and that has to stop. Now, basic income won't have a direct impact on that, but again, as was said before, it would provide a kind of floor so that people can stay and solve the problems in their home countries, and that they actually have a real choice, all right, about whether to stay or to go. That's the kind of world I want to see, and that's really all I have to say right now. So thank you very much.
So I guess now we come to the question of financing a bit. I have to read it to introduce Nir Jacobi from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. And he is Chief Financial Officer and Chief Economist and Economic Consultant in several companies and organizations. Dissertation about tax, in which the progressivity is achieved by a UBI loans. economics lead in Gold Dollar, a 100% non-profit project, where they examine the implementation of a global UBI over blockchain in an open source cryptocurrency. So that sounds very interesting. I would like to give you the word.
Well, after such an opening, I don't know if I have what to add, but I can thank you for inviting me. I thought I will come to speak, and I will speak about UBI, global UBI, and cryptocurrencies, and the technology of blockchain. But first, as Enno mentioned, my PhD dissertation was about VAT, and I want to correct the impression that was made in the former panel when someone said that VAT is a bad tax, and that hurt me personally because I really work a long time of my life on VAT. And the way I came across UBI was through I was looking for the optimal tax system, and I found that VAT is the most efficient tax that exists, and that should finance most of the state's spending. Besides other taxes, corrective taxes like carbon taxes, and are also efficient, and land value taxes. And it's not only UBI. I see independence of the way it should finance all public spending, including UBI. So VAT taxes consumption, which is one of the problems that was mentioned in the former panel, instead of income, which is the effort of people to produce and to invest and to innovate, and they get fined when they get income for that. The other way around is to fine people what they take from the economy, and that's what consumption tax are doing. And anyway, but when you talk about VAT, the problem is its progressivity. It's really not progressive. So I found that UBI, together with VAT, is the optimal tax system, because in one way you raise funds for public spending in the most efficient way, and you also mitigate inequality and poverty also in the most efficient way by UBI. So that's what about the VAT. Now about the cryptocurrency. We are in good dollars are trying to cope with the global inequality, rather the in-country inequality that most of the classic UBI refers to. UBI in the state level, and there was also in the former panel one that said try to solve also the problem of global inequality with the UN and with government cooperation. It's a good idea and it might work, but the trend now in the world is the opposite. More nationalism, less globalization. I don't see Trump voters pay tax to give UBI to poor Nigerians or Malawi or Egyptian. I don't see that happening in the next few years. The trend is the opposite. So we think about a way to make UBI independently of government. But for this, we have three problems. One that I call U, B, and I. The U problem is how to make it universal. If we are not government, we don't know, we don't have a list of people, where they live and who are they, and if they are real, if they are unique. So the first problem we have is how to identify the people that are registered to the system, that they are real and unique. This is the first problem. The second problem, I call the B problem, is basic. When we talk about global basic income, what is basic need? Well, $2 can save life in Africa, but after being 3 days in Oslo, it buys nothing in Oslo. Okay, so what is the basic needs in Norway or in other countries. So this is a problem. And the third problem I called the income. It's the income of the system. How can we finance if we have a system that is not compulsory and we can't force people to pay tax in order to give it? So these three problems avoid people from, or avoid us from using a global ungovernmental UBI. But we think that now there's a new technology in the last 10 years, blockchain and smart contracts, that might be the beginning of the solution. And that's where we are trying to experiment in the good dollar and making, it's actually a series of experiments to try and solve this problem through cryptocurrency. To make a new cryptocurrency, if someone doesn't know what cryptocurrency, we have a session in afterwards. We might explain it in a nutshell, but it's cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, something, currencies that are not made by government or by central bank or by banks, made by the people, for the people. So as you know, for example, in Bitcoin, new coins are minted and go to the person who minted them, and that makes him richer. In our system, the system will mint the coins according to an algorithm, depending on time and users, and will go straight in an equal way to all users. And also the problem of identification is now being solved with a lot of startups around the world, how to have a valid identification over the blockchain. And the value, how this currency will get value, there is a lot of, it's a little short here to explain, but for example, all the projects that were mentioned earlier, clean water, renewable electricity, people can, donators can open these facilities and get people to pay with a good dollar that they got free from the blockchain, from a good dollar. They got free currency, and while they start to pay for clean water or for electricity, then these coins will have value, and also other commercial companies can sell with good dollar. And as long as more people will have it, and it will be a very big tool or a mean of payment, then it will gain its value and will have a real value. And if they talk about $10 a month, I think it can be done. That is for now.
I would like to add one question. So cryptocurrencies, for me, it's always a little bit of a miracle. But my idea is, or the question is, can there be a pilot project with that cryptocurrency, with blockchain, gold, dollar? Can there be anything that makes visible how it works? Maybe in a certain community worldwide who are involved in this project. So is there anything that can become visible and reportable?
Actually, good dollar is not the only one who tried to do this UBI over the blockchain. There are several groups that are trying to do it, and also in a very short, in a very small scale. In Kenya, for example, there is such a thing that they give cryptocurrency to people, and then they can buy things in the village and pay, and it starts to work. We try to make it globally, in a global scale, but there are few experiments that are now being done. And there are also other cryptocurrencies that give UBI already, with a little shops that you can buy, or can buy second-hand things and little other things. It's really in the beginning, but it's gain momentum.
So the next I have to read again. Uwe Jakobsen, and he's professor of ecological economics, director of the Center for Ecological Economics and Ethics, member of the board of the Bode Graduate School of Business at the University of Nordland. His work is related to philosophy, economics, business administrations, systems theory, and art. And he wrote a lot of books, among others, Anarchism and Ecological Economics. So I would like to give you... Yeah.
Thank you very much for the invitation to participate and contribute in this very important conference. As you said, Center for Ecological Economics and Ethics have existed since 1993 at the business school in Bodø. And we do research and we have courses on all levels, bachelor, master, and PhD. And now I will say nothing more about that, but go directly into the topic today. And I have titled this contribution for a transformative approach to a sustainable future. And I connected to my two latest books. First, Transformative Ecological Economics. And the concept transformative is connected to ecological economics because I also discuss the spiritual dimensions of economy, not only connected to thermodynamics and Darwinist evolutionary theories, but also spirituality inspired by Buddhist philosophy and also anthroposophy, Rudolf Steiner's contribution. The latest book published this year, Anarchism and Ecological Economics, a transformative approach to a sustainable future, is a question, why does not anything happen? Everybody talks about greening the economy, they talk about the green shift, and nothing happens really. So my question is there something wrong with the existing ideology? And then I search for alternatives. And then I come into anarchism and find a very interesting source of inspiration. So, and also the time is right for this kind of thinking. 100 years ago, the time was not right, but today, I refer to the New Scientist, for example, say that what can science do to reshape economics and make it fit for a finite world? And the other citations under there, our global systems, which are designed for perpetual growth, need to be fundamentally restructured to avoid the worst case outcome. And this was everything I want to say about negative things. After this, only constructive, positive input. A deeper systemic change is needed. I now refer to Niculescu. I could have referred to a whole lot of other researchers, but I think Niculescu points at a very interesting and relevant thing when he says it is not enough to make modifications within the existing system. We need a deeper systemic change. To solve the complex challenges we are facing today, transdisciplinarity is not only possible, but also vitally necessary. So in other words, we have to restructure the work in the university, we have to connect between different faculties, institutes, and so on, and we also have to connect to practice, and in addition to that, we have to work together with people in art. Eric Fromm said something interesting in 1955, reform can be radical, that is going to its roots, or it can be superficial, trying to patch up systems without touching the causes. And in my opinion, we are trying to reduce negative symptoms without touching the causes these days. So we have to go deeper, dig deeper. And to find out these things, we have to take a quick step into philosophy of science. And I have been inspired from the Hungarian philosopher Imre Lakatos, who differs between the hardcore in the research system and the protective belt. And he says that theories, concepts, preconditions that are taken for granted and cannot be questioned without threatening the research program or the ideology, in my interpretation, is something that is never discussed. But we discuss the protective belt, how theories and concepts that can be changed in order to protect the hardcore. And I will give examples and connect it to the difference between green economy and ecological economics. In green economy, we are living without asking questions to the hardcore of the existing system. Ecological economics ask these kind of questions, and therefore we come into, what could I say, trouble. So that is a positive thing from my position. Green economy, focus on reducing negative symptoms within the dominating ideology. Green economy is an attempt to rescue the existing system by curbing the negative systems of the established ideology. Changes in the protective belt without challenging the hardcore. An example here, growth is a part of the hardcore in the existing capitalist market economy. This is changed to green growth. Growth is still there, but we make some changes in the protective belt. It's green instead of only growth. And we say that competition is still there, but it's now hidden behind some concepts like, for example, CSR or other fancy things that we find on every homepage to every company today. Without anything happens really. And the strategic planning, in other words, a plan for beating your enemies, is changed to eco-management for a better reputation. And ecocentric rationality is circular economy for higher competitiveness, is an example. I had just a meeting with Avfall Norge, Waste Norway, and they totally agree that this is not enough to solve the problems we are facing today. And I find a definition of, for example, circular economy that is very interesting in this connection. A circular economy is led by business for a profit within the rules of the game, within the hardcore. Higher competitiveness, higher resource security, and material efficiency. So in other words, we try to reduce negative symptoms without going into the real causes. And another contributor in philosophy of science is Paul Feyerabend. And he says something that is absolutely necessary to be aware of when we talk about change in our systems to make it possible to have a sustainable future. He says, to reach any new understanding, we have to ask questions that challenge and contradict well-established theories. The consistent condition demanding that new hypotheses are consistent with accepted theories serves to keep the older theories in place. And here we find something interesting for all of us who are working with studies and universities and things like that. We always ask our students to put the research question into a frame of reference based upon accepted theories. And then Feyerabend says, then we are secure that nothing will happen. They are bound to be within this cave. Success by scientists has traditionally involved non-scientific elements. And this is not normative, this is a description of how the deep changes in science have come out in history, according to Paul Feyerabend. And he says the consistency condition, the condition that demands that new hypotheses are consistent with accepted theories, merely serves to keep the older theories in place. So we have to ask questions that contradict established theories. And then what is ecological economics? Ecological economics was established as a university topic in 1989 in USA, Maryland, but I think it has existed since Aristotle, more than 2,500 years. And the economy we are referring to today, the capitalist neoliberal economy, have only 200 years history. So from one perspective, we can say that ecological economics is a new topic, but from another perspective, this is the economy, how we manage our resources from the beginning in our European tradition. Ecological economics focus on the causes behind the most serious current problems: poverty, environmental sustainability, war, terrorism. All these things that we find in the UN 17 development goals, sustainable development goals. Ecological economics encourage new utopian ways of thinking about linkages between ecological, social, and economic systems. So here we connect economy to society, and we connect economy to nature. And in an abstract theory of economics, this is not the fact today. Economy is an abstraction both from culture and nature. So ecological economics asks critical questions to the hardcore and disturbs the existing system and suggests revisions. And here is a very interesting point, because many universities and business schools said we do not want ecological economics in our curriculum because it makes disturbance. But the point here is that is exactly what we want, to make disturbance, to make people think. Ruth Levitas, a very important researcher in using utopian methods in England these days, have a very good answer when people say you are talking about utopia, it's not possible, this is interesting, but I have nothing to do with the real world. Then she says, utopia is not about the impossible. What is really impossible is to carry on as we are. Everybody accepts that. We cannot have growth, exponential growth on Earth that is not growing. So that is easy to understand. The next one, the utopian workshops. We are working all over Norway and in other countries too, with what we call utopian workshops, where people are invited to define a future where they want to live. We paint a picture of the future that we really want to go into. We are inspired, we have energy, we have direction, we want to go into that future because we have made it ourselves, bottom up. We are not using experts to tell us about how the future should be. We ask people, how is your society in 20, 30, 50 years that you really want to go into? This is more, what should I say, relevant and inspiring and motivating than making people afraid and saying that if you do not change your habits, everything will go to hell. That is not a good inspiration for change. So, and here I refer to the context, when we divide between ideology and utopia, I refer back to Karl Mannheim, another Hungarian sociologist, who said that the tension between ideology and utopia is the energy and makes the direction for change. And he published his book in 1936. In 1986, Paul Ricoeur, French philosopher, published a book with the same title, Ideology and Utopia. And we say, and utopia, not or, and. So we both need ideology, and ideology describes actuality. Ideology describes the present from inside, is rooted in the ideas of the dominant social groups, refers to accepted norms and values, and justifies authorities. And this is a good society. Everybody agree on that. This is a well-ordered society. But according to Paul Ricoeur, we need the tension between what is and what could be. And you see, actuality and potentiality, we refer back to Aristotle. The tension between what is and what could be is the driving force for change. So therefore, we have to put more focus on utopia and to develop utopian ideas. And utopia understands the present from outside, is somewhere else. And this is the definition from Thomas More and his book, Utopia from 1516, 500 years ago, geared towards the future. Should not be realized, it can only work in that direction. So we have to work with utopian thinking all the time. We have not a finished idea about how the future will be. It's an ongoing process that we, bottom up, should participate in, not leave that to experts or politicians. And Paul Ricoeur says, in a society without utopia, ideology becomes static. Without ideology, utopia becomes a mirage. So we have to connect to reality in a way. The utopian thinking must be connected to reality. And then we have the change, ecological economics changes in the hardcore. Here is something disturbance with not only with the utopian thinking, but also with the technique picture here. But okay, ideology and utopia. We ask questions to the hardcore. Instead of quantitative growth, we talk about qualitative development. And development has something to do with relations. Growth has something to do with objects. So when we talk about qualitative development, dialogue-based interaction is central. And in accordance, connected to that, from atomistic competition to cooperative networks. We have to establish networks where people work together to solve problems and to make a brighter future happen. Strategic planning, the military concept, strategy, how to make a plan, how to beat your enemies in the military context, or in the market where you should beat your competitors. We change to a partnership approach, and we change from saying that rationality is to behave like a egocentric, utility maximizing person, to be an ecological man, where you include both human beings and nature in your ego. And this is inspired, for example, from Spinoza. So, in other words, the intention of a utopia is to change, to shatter the present order. And now, my conclusion in the book of Anarchism, I asked the question, why does not anything happen, even if most of us say we want what we can call a green shift? Okay, we want qualitative development, we want cooperation, we want partnership approach. We put it into the existing ideology. I call it a converter. Growth, competition, strategy. What comes out? Green economy, green growth, sustainable competition, green strategy. It's obvious. But the next thing is, why is it so? Yeah, I have an explanation here. If we compare practice to ideology, we can find out that what is possible in practice and possible within the existing ideology, we find green economy. This is no problem. Everybody accepts it. We want green economy, we earn more money, we have a greater position on the market, everything is okay, and we reduce the negative symptoms in the same way. Ecological economics is absolutely possible in practice, but it is impossible, in my opinion, within the existing system. So we have to do some changes here. But you can also say that we can be a technological optimist and say what is practical, impossible today, could be possible if technology solves all the problems. So that is maybe a possibility too. But the idea that we can move to another planet when this Earth is finished, I think that is impossible both in practice and in ideology. And then, if we convert it, I know it's a question, what could be the output? We put in the same thing, qualitative development and so forth, into a converter, and we are inspired from Kropotkin, Reclus, the organic anarchists talking about a community, talking about freedom and solidarity, self-government, mutualism, cooperation, decentralized system, and so on and so forth. What comes out, maybe, if you are very optimistic like me, human flourishing, equity, direct participation in associations and communities. I don't know, maybe. I think we have to try something new. And now the last picture. And this is a figure from the first book, Transformative Ecological Economics. I think we have to discuss the worldview, how we understand the world we live in. So in all our courses in ecological economics, we start with a discussion of the changes in the European culture between a mechanical way of thinking and an organic way of thinking. And I will not go through all the changes today, but there have been many changes through history. But today we are almost only talking about a mechanistic way of understanding things. So the first thing we have to do is to reflect on the change from a mechanistic to an organic way of thinking. And this has influence on the systems level. If we think in an organic way, we have to change from atomistic competition to cooperative networks. All ecologists today accept and agree in that change. They say in nature, we have cooperative networks, synergy effects, we have never the opposite. And then the image of man. We have to change from the economic man to an ecological man. And more than that, if we connect these things to practice, we will say that practice has to change from trying to beat every other economic actor to build a partnership approach, to base our thinking about the practice about a partnership approach. And then we have a possibility here to connect all these things. And the last word from me in this introduction is that today we ask practice to change, to behave responsible towards society, individuals, and nature, without asking questions to the rationality of the image of man, without asking questions to the system, and the answer is obvious: nothing happens. So we have to dig deeper, we have to say something about the systems levels, and we have to discuss the rationality, the concept of rationality in human beings, in individuals. Okay, thank you.
Very much. Okay, that was a bunch of topics, and I would like to add, and all this can become possible if we separate income and work on the basis of, on the level of a basic income, so that you can step out of the system. Okay, that was a conclusion. But I think there can be many, many questions about this. What really happens that the companies, the economy has all that values in their programs since 30 years. But they always just use that for advertisement, competition, and to kill the others who don't have that. So that's a question ultimately about what we understand by what the human being is. So, and today we have this philosophy of a human being that it is this Homo economicus. Okay, I would like to introduce Thomas Hyland Eriksson, Professor of Social Anthropology at the University of Oslo, former President of the European Association of Social Anthropologists, and he also has written several books and is dealing with the quality of life, ecology, identity politics, nationalism and globalization, and related issues. So I would like to give you.
I'll stand. So thanks very much. It's a real pleasure to be here. And in my brief comments, I think I'll take my cue from what Ove Jacobsen said about the changing worldviews and the potential for changing society, and connecting this to the concept of basic income. And I would also say a few things about some of the ways in which perhaps our worldviews can be changed, because it's not enough, to decide that worldviews must be changed. We've had a lot of knowledge for a long time. Knowledge has existed for a long time about the conditions for a good life, for a just society, for an ecologically sustainable world. And as Ove Jacobsen rightly says, very little has happened. And why is that? Well, I think it's because there's a disconnect between worldviews, which cost you 2 calories to change. It's very cheap. I mean, to change your worldview if you want to. And practices, which are much more inert, which are more sluggish, which are material, which are connected to infrastructures, to investments, to institutions, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to basic income, and some of the ideas underlying basic income, and one of the reasons why I find them attractive, let me just give you a very short anecdote, or not really an anecdote, it's an anthropological report from an African village. And it's a typical report from an African village, mid-20th century, that I came across as an undergraduate. Where you have this village based on subsistence agriculture, a bit of trade. It's pretty poor by European standards, even the European standards of the early post-Second World War years. This was a poor place, but it was not the place where people starved. And why was that? There was no starvation. There wasn't much of a surplus either, but there was a bit of trade, as I said. So that the people in the village could actually buy through barter or exchange, obtain certain goods that they were not capable of producing themselves. For example, metals and cloth. But there was no starvation. And why is that? Because, well, the reason is that they had a good system of redistribution. So the chief said to the anthropologist, A very typical statement from a Central African chief at the time. He said to the anthropologist, you know, I'm the chief, I'm supposed to be in charge of everything here, and in a sense I am in charge of everything here, but I'm the poorest man in the village because I have to redistribute everything they give to me. People came to the chief with what we would call tax money or tax, you know, payments, okay, in goods, okay, whatever they had. And everybody knew, because this was a fairly small, it was easy to get an overview of what people had. They would have to give a share of it to the chief. And his duty was to redistribute it to people who needed it. There was no question as to whether someone had deserved, to get their share through redistribution, rather who needed, who were the needy, who were the poor, who were the people who would otherwise starve. They were prevented from starving because the chief had this duty of redistribution. So that's a very primitive system of basic income, if you see what I mean. Very primitive system of basic income, where no question is asked as to whether you have deserved it through your hard labor, but whether you need it. Or it's a form of, you might say, primeval communism in the Marxist terms also, perhaps, up to a certain point. Now, what I'm going to do when I now reflect on some of the possible implications of a basic income scheme, some of the possible implications, is to largely take as my point of departure not the Namibian case or the global south, but the affluent societies, okay? People like us. As early as the 1930s, John Maynard Keynes pointed out that owing to increased efficiency and higher productivity, and he might have added automation, and he certainly would have had he lived a few decades later, people in a kind of society that Great Britain is, that kind of society, wouldn't have to work maybe more than 15 hours a week at the end of the century. That is the end of the 20th century. And as we know, yes, I mean, all of this happened. Increased productivity, increased efficiency, automation, technological advances have enabled us to work far less. And still we continue to work about 40 hours a week. Why is that? I think the answer to this is complex. And I'm not going into it here, but what I want to say by pointing this out is that we have so many options now, particularly in this part of the world, but also globally. We have so many options, and we're not using any of them. There must be an element of path dependency there, that we do what we used to. We go to work, and some of us have meaningful jobs, others less. Some of us perform necessary work, others do less, but we could have done things very differently. And what we've already seen, that's not my note, but it's, sorry? Oh yeah, well, thanks very much, yeah. Thanks very much. What we do know is that we could have done so many things differently, but let's realize that, in fact, although basic income has somehow been on the radar for a number of years, it's not really on the political agenda in an earnest and serious way. And why is that? I think the answer is complicated, and I'm not going into all the counter arguments here, but let me just mention one typical objection, namely is that if people were to receive a guaranteed income, preventing them from starving, they would be lazy. You know, they would just lie on the couch and drink beer and watch Netflix in this part of the world. In other words, a fundamentally flawed view of human nature, because human beings have a fundamental need to be needed, okay? One of the most fundamental needs is to be needed, to perform useful tasks, to make yourself useful and even indispensable to others. So to me, one of the attractions of basic income is not that it would legitimate laziness. I mean, we need to argue against that in a consistent way, because it's not true. We know it's not true. It would not encourage laziness. It would rather encourage people and enable people to perform other kinds of necessary tasks outside the wage work. It would problematize the boundary between wage work and non-wage work in the economy. non-wage work would increasingly also be seen as part of the economy with a basic income scheme. Necessary work, which is not paid, which is often slow, often low sort of, low intensity, low productivity by the criteria of conventional economics. I like that. The balancing cow. Yeah. I'll finish very soon. Yeah. So we could think about and also connected to some of the thoughts that have been presented here earlier. A shift, shifting the balance not only away from wage work, but shifting the balance also away from individual to collective, from competition to cooperation, and it would also encourage what I think is seriously needed these days, namely a total renovation of the concept of development. What do we mean by development? It's not the whole answer, but it's one important piece in the jigsaw puzzle that we need to lay out now in order to survive the 21st century in a reasonably decent way.
Thank you very much. And then what's the short?
I shouldn't have given away my 5 minutes earlier on. I realized I have to take them back now. I think this is big thoughts and it's interesting thoughts, but what I find the most fascinating with the UBI is what happened to someone that gets it. And I think that's one of from the Finnish experiment, one of the results there is that people had more trust. People got more trust to society, to politicians, and I think that is such a great thing with the basic income. This is what we need. We need trust, and we don't have that today. That's why the society looks like it does, and all the right-wing nationalist parties coming up. Give people money and they feel trust. And that's what I notice every day in my working life when I work with these people that used to live on the street. You give them somewhere to live, you give them food, their life changes. They have trust. They have someone that believes in it. The girls I work with, if we believe in them, and they do miracles. So if they do miracles, everyone will do a miracle, and we will get much, much better and brighter society or future.
I think you have seen, so this is, for going on by basic income in Norway, you have to connect the scientists and the activists and the simple problems of those who are struggling with anything and those plans and ideas. So I guess this is just obvious by this podium, surprisingly for me, but that's everywhere. We need all that research, all that knowledge, but also it has to come to the people, to the ordinary people. And always, also for you, the question is, where can we start? You know, it's so huge, so many ideas, so important, and it comes to a world in oneself for me and a few colleagues, but how to come out of that? And how from the other side come from that direct problems with the people, so by encountering people, how can that come to a level that is higher, that is a society level? So how can we work together? I guess that is a main question, not to stay in your own world, which becomes more and more perfect, whether in critics or whatever, and to open up and to start moving. And that's for me. So I'm a painter, and you know, if you want to make a picture, you have to start anywhere. If you say it's global, yeah, but then you have to start in your backyard or anywhere. You have to make it real at the first step. I guess this is part of the strategy we have to consider, and how we can implement all these ideas about financing, everything like that, without fighting against each other, but to cooperate. So now we have a little time for your questions. Please there, up there.
I just wanted to ask the guy from Good Dollar. You mentioned that you can do ID via the blockchain, and I'm dying to know how you can do that. So that you can be absolutely sure that one person who signs up is actually only one person and they aren't signing up for 10 basic incomes.
Well, I didn't say we have done it already. I said we are experimenting, and there are some ideas about it. To do it totally decentralized, it rules out biological identification, for example, for now at least. But there are other ideas of social identity that other people in the network might approve that a new person is real and is unique. It means it is not already in the system. So no one will have multiple accounts and will get multiple UBI. So this is also part of the experiment. And we are working on such algorithm, and we are incorporate with others who do it. And it will not go for 100%, but 96 will be enough for the beginning. I don't think even other identification system, even of the financial system, are not 100% safe. So we want to start with something, and there's any technological, it will advance in the future.
I have a question.
Well.
Over here, darling.
Yeah.
There you go. To the panel, do you believe that it's possible with a paradigm shift without revolution? Because what you're talking about is a shift in paradigm. You're shifting, like thinking that what we teach in schools today, we need to teach them something else, and the old ways needs to die. Is that possible without a revolution?
Thanks for the question. I mean, ultimately, I think that probably is what we need is a revolution, but I think basic income is a really good way to start there. We need to build the power to actually get it, and especially if we're demanding basic income from governments in particular, it's quite a lot for them to get their heads around. But I have to say, in my experience of organizing for basic income and talking to people on the street about it, and we've seen a bit of that here already in the audience. Talking about basic income, it's an idea that people don't forget, and whether they like it initially or they don't like it initially, they don't forget about it and they think about it. The other thing it does, I think, is really open up people's minds about other things that need to happen, whether that's about the monetary system, whether that's about the environment, whether that's about work. Okay, it really kind of touches a lot of trigger points that people have, okay, if I can say, about about our lives and how we lead them. So.
Well, the answer is no, because what we need to clearly need is to shift our way of approaching the world and what we think of as the economy, and towards a more holistic appreciation of the way in which things are interconnected. And obviously this has serious implications for the education. The reason I'm saying no is that it's already happening in a small way. And climate change being the most sort of mounting, as it were, challenge, which is new to humanity because it requires cooperation and not competition in order to be solved. It cannot be solved in one country. This will again lead us to interrogate the purpose of the economy. Is the purpose of the economy to help already absurdly rich people, individuals and corporations become even richer? Or is it to satisfy human needs and increasingly the needs of the planet? And if the answer is the latter and not the former, that will not require a revolution. I mean, in the conventional sense, before and after revolution. I don't believe in that. I believe in a gradual shift towards something qualitatively different.
Yeah, and that means that we should have revolutionary goals and evolutionary means.
So for me, I'm listening to Vikingers. So they have been conquerors, and they should do that again with a new idea of economy. So there has been many questions. We can two more.
Well, I think anybody who comes to a meeting like this is familiar with some of the potential benefits of UBI. And I was wondering, it'd be nice to talk about the challenges and pitfalls. For instance, when it comes to sustainable development goals, we had poverty and equality. Now, couldn't, for instance, the UBI become kind of a poverty trap rather than the solution to poverty if you get half the population stuck in a low UBI and everybody else goes to work, and doesn't participate in the formal economy in the same way as the other half, or do you just keep the UBI so low that it's not really a real alternative to participating in the formal economy in the form of a regular job?
Okay, this is something that we grapple with constantly within the basic income movement, for sure. And there are many plans out there, some that are a lower basic income with other benefits on top, or various kind of permutations, or whether that's like a fully livable basic income, and certainly defining what is livable is a very, kind of slippery concept for sure. My own view, and this is again, because I work in welfare and I also used to be on welfare myself, is that even if it's not a fully livable income in any particular area, having a portion of your income unconditional, all right, will make a very big difference, all right? I don't think, the fact that it goes to everybody means that it cannot, people will defend it, all right? When I'm working, because I'm working with a lot of people with disabilities and long-term health conditions, one of the problems that we've had in the UK, these have been cut. And part of the problem with, part of the reason that they've been able to cut this is because those different disability benefits, and there are about 5 or 6 different ones in the UK, well, there used to be anyway, there aren't so much anymore, is that, because those benefits just went to very small parts of the population, when the government wanted to cut them, there was no real outcry, all right? And so, if we can kind of start with a small, even if we start with a smaller basic income, again, it will make a massive difference for people who really have access to no money, because at the moment, again, in the UK, with the way the welfare reforms have gone through, there are people with no money. All right, so a little money is better than no money. Obviously, a livable amount, and we can argue until the cows come home about how much a livable amount is. And again, it very much depends on community. A lot of the people that come to see us for help with their benefits have done everything they can to avoid it, okay? And what that everything usually means is that they get into massive amounts of debt, not just with credit cards and banks, but also with their family, with their friends, with the people who actually make living on a low income possible and somehow more human. All right, so they get into debt, then those friends and family get fed up with them, they cut off the relationships, all right, and so then they come to us and they're having to deal with living on benefits, all right, without any of the kinds of human relationships which actually make that possible. One of the things I was going to talk, sorry, if I can just, one more thing. Okay, when I was on benefits, I was raising my son, all right, and what I have to say is that having a secure place to live and having some money, some regular money coming in, that both myself and my son's father were able to have, made it possible for us to share his care equally. All right, made it possible, even though we weren't together, made it possible for us to raise our son, all right, in a way that was very, was very stable, and it meant that we didn't have to argue about money, and also we could just decide the time, when we were going to look after him in a very kind of humane way. So I have to say that a basic income, I think, would also make it very much more possible to stop the kind of competition that happens between parents, okay, especially when they split up, especially when kids are involved, all right, and make it much easier to be human with each other.
I just want to answer my view of your question. I think the thing is that you asked that from the system we have today, everything is valued in work and what we make, what we earn. That's how we are defined. But I think when we have a UBI, that changes. You can look at societies where money isn't as important, other values comes. So the society will change when we get the UBI, and then it's not going to be the same. You don't value people in what they're making, in living in the wage. As long as you have what you need, food and somewhere to live. So I think it will change.
It's not his question.
I want to say that basic income is very important to get rid of extreme poverty and increase fairness, freedom, creativity, and other things connected to that. But I think it's even at least as much important to get rid of extreme richness, because this is a democratic problem. People with all this money have an influence of how the society develops. 10 people owns 50% of the world. And in the local communities, you have the same thing, and they have an influence on what happens. That is a very important democratic problem. Therefore, basic income is of the greatest importance.
That is a final statement. We are over the time, so I see there are many questions, but we will have this conference again and again and again. So I thank you very much. I thank you very much for your statements and your knowledge you shared with us, and for your listening and questioning. And I hope it will continue and grow and grow and grow in Norway.
Yes. Thank you to this excellent panel. In a few minutes, lunch will be served downstairs. To those of you who have decided to splurge on the conference pass that includes lunch, I'll see you here again at 1:30. And I'll also remind you that tomorrow's closing remarks will in part depend on the notes that you take during the conference. So please keep that in mind. Thank you.
Well, I think one of the ways we can do that is stop paying for work. And it's also because a lot of the organizations, like the unions who support the organizations who pay those jobs. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, we need to. Yeah.